The questions that were put in a sort of Delphi-style questionnaire were, can the current sanctions bring about a halt of the Iranian nuclear program before it reaches fruition? Now, these questionnaires, by the way, were anonymous, and these are the results from the questionnaire. As you can see, a very, very large majority, 42% absolutely not and 42% no, said that the current sanctions cannot. Will increased biting sanctions be capable of halting the Iranian nuclear program? Here again we see about 30-30, 60% say definitely or not. Then the question, can military action eliminate or substantially delay the Iranian nuclear program? And here is an interesting answer. A rounding 43% said absolutely yes, and another 26% said yes. A very small minority said no. Now, an Iranian reaction to a military, Iranian reaction has been an issue which many people have said, well, if Israel attacks, then this will cause some sort of a cataclysm in the Gulf. Here we see most people say, yes, no matter what, Israel is going to bear the brunt. It's going to be both missile attacks against Israel, Gaza and Lebanon, Israeli targets abroad, whether it's Israeli attack or not. But what is interesting here is that it is clear to everybody that if it's an Israeli attack, then this will not spread to the Gulf. Most people say definitely this will not spread to the Gulf. The danger of Iran is in eventually not just a Cold War that will exist between Israel and the other countries and Iran, but in the eventuality, the possibility of escalation scenarios in which this will not behave like the Cold War, but it will eventually end in a nuclear confrontation. And this is something that we should bear in mind.
I do believe that sanctions, the current sanctions, would not harm the democratic movement which is going on in Iran. But I think that in order to increase the positive impact of the sanctions on the psychology of Iranian people, one of the solutions is that to increase or expand the circle of sanctions to the human rights issues. Only in last January 2011, more than 80 people were executed in Iran despite all warning from human rights organizations. So I think that this would be a very good idea to combine the targeted sanctions which target the organizations and individuals who are involved in nuclear program or in terrorist activities with sanctions on human rights. I think all people who are involved in the violation of human rights in Iran, from Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, to commanders of Revolutionary Guard and intelligence officials and judiciary officials, should be banned from traveling to the world outside, especially to Europe. By emphasizing on the people's need, you would deprive Iranian regime from using the existing sanctions for its own agenda. Thank you.
U.S. sanctions and international sanctions on Iran have had two important impacts recently. First is they have contributed to slowing down Iran's nuclear program. The IAEA reports that Iran has made no new centrifuges in more than a year, after a period of time in which Iran was making at least 150 a month. No new centrifuges. If we can sow doubt in the minds of Iranian leaders as to whether or not they will ever be able to successfully complete their nuclear program, it is much more likely that they will be interested in pursuing some diplomatic compromise. It is Iran which is blocking progress on the nuclear program, and that the problem is Tehran, not Washington. That is quite a change from a few years ago, when many around the world, many in America, thought that it was the United States which was the source of the impasse. If we can create doubt in the minds of Iranian leaders as to whether or not they're going to succeed, and if we can lead them to think that the international community will take those measures necessary to prevent Iran from completing its program, we are more likely to see a successful negotiated settlement.
How does the Iranian government see the sanctions? We hear all the bombastic statements. Mr. Ahmadinejad, 2 months ago in a press conference in Istanbul, said, if you ask the people of Iran about sanctions, they will tell you, what is sanctions? We don't know. So we want to see whether the government is actually, there's something behind the rhetoric. First and foremost, the government is taking sanctions extremely seriously. They are creating a lockdown of information about the impact of sanctions. First and foremost, the Supreme National Security Council, through the Ministry of Islamic Guidance, has instructed all Iranian news outlets not to talk about the impact of sanctions. Number two, President Ahmadinejad is now not revealing Iran's oil income to the members of Iran's parliament. This is parliamentarians, not the members of the public. They asked the head of the central bank, Mahmoud Bahmani, about how much oil income did we have last year. He says that's an information that's confidential because we don't want the enemy to know how much was our income because it could be used against us. So the fact that the Iranian government is trying not to reveal the information about how much money it has, it's a sign that there is something wrong there and the Iranian government doesn't want to show it. In Iran, the head of the central bank, according to the constitution, has to be elected by a shura, by a council of the bank's management, then recommended to the Majlis, the parliament, and the parliament has to approve or disapprove the choice. President Ahmadinejad is now choosing the head of the central bank himself against the constitution of the Islamic Republic with the backing of Ayatollah Khamenei because he wants to control all the money that's coming in and more important than that, information about how much money there is in the central bank because of the concerns of the damage that sanctions are creating and because the government wants to move money around without telling the Majlis, especially towards for the nuclear program. By inflating the price of shares in Iran, by inflating the income of companies that are listed on the stock exchange, the government is trying to make up for the losses that sanctions are creating, and also to create an image in front of the Iranian people that our economy is doing well. How is it that the Iranian stock exchange, despite the fact that unemployment, inflation in Iran are increasing every day, is performing better than any other stock exchange in the Middle East and perhaps in many parts of the world? Why is it that it has increased by 100% in terms of its income? This is a very important development that is happening inside Iran, and just like any other bubble, the day it bursts, it is going to have significant social consequences in Iran. But for the Iranian government, for now, the priority is try to carry on as long as possible to finance the nuclear program, to see where is a threshold. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to running the engine of the Islamic Republic, it doesn't run on death to America or death to Israel. It runs on its economy. And the regime is trying to see how long it can finance the nuclear program with its economy. And the day the economic pain becomes too high, then it is a very strong possibility that it will stop the nuclear program.
Let's put aside a very familiar argument that sanctions somehow are a silver bullet, that in and of themselves are going to stop the Iranian nuclear program and bring down the regime. It's nonsense. They're not a silver bullet, but sanctions are silver shrapnel. And shrapnel can wound a regime that is suffering a significant economic crisis and a significant political crisis. And the goal is to step up these sanctions, impose biting sanctions, and go after the lifeblood of the Iranian regime, which is its energy sector. But let's not be Pollyannish about this. The Iranians are very smart. For every measure, there is a countermeasure. They are playing three-dimensional chess with us. They are looking for ways to circumvent sanctions. So let's make no mistake. This is not a static game. This is a game where we need to continue to layer sanctions on top of sanctions. The Iranians export 2.2 million barrels a day. If we can cut 20 or 30% of that, we are making a significant difference. Israel needs to be more Catholic than the Pope. Israel needs to take the lead in imposing sanctions against Iran. It is absolutely unacceptable for this company and Israeli companies to be doing business with Iran. You've got an energy sector now which is thriving. You've got $60 billion worth of natural gas in the Mediterranean. Do not allow companies that are doing business with Iran to do business with Israel. It would be a public relations disaster, and it is absolutely essential that Israel lead the way, not just follow the United States and Europe. Thank you.